we have a story we tell ourselves. A neat, orderly story of how humanity came to be.
The story begins with the farm. Our ancestors learned to cultivate the land, trading uncertainty for the promise of the harvest. From the stability of the farm grew the first permanent settlements, our earliest towns and villages.
And only then, with full bellies and secure homes, did we find the time for grand monuments and complex belief systems.
This sequence is logical. It is comforting. And in 1994, on a remote hilltop in southern Turkey, we discovered it was completely wrong.
The site was known to locals as Göbekli Tepe, the pot-bellied hill. For generations, it was dismissed as an unimportant place. But one archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, saw something else. Not the gentle curve of nature, but the deliberate shape of something massive, buried. He began a small excavation, and what his team found was not a grave, but the tip of a giant, immaculately carved monolith. Soon, another emerged, and then another, all arranged in a perfect, massive circle. When the first carbon dating results came back, they were so extreme, the team assumed their equipment was broken. The site was nearly 12,000 years old. This was not just old. It was 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, a monument long considered the pinnacle of prehistoric achievement. It was 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, predating the Egyptian civilization itself by an almost unimaginable span of time. It was built in an age so deep, so remote, that it predates the invention of writing by 6 millennia. This was not just old. It was 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, a monument long considered the pinnacle of prehistoric achievement. Most astonishingly of all, it was built before the widespread adoption of agriculture. The established timeline of human history was not just wrong, it was backward. Humanity did not develop complex spiritual beliefs because we had surplus grain. It seems we invented farming so that we could support a spiritual belief. The sheer scale of the site is breathtaking. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed not just one circle, but at least 20. Hundreds upon hundreds of colossal pillars, a veritable forest of stone, still buried beneath the earth. Each pillar stands up to 19 feet tall and weighs as much as 50 tons, a testament to a forgotten engineering prowess. They were designed to loom over the viewer, to inspire a feeling of smallness in the face of the immense. For 12 millennia, this city of stone has slept beneath the hill, waiting. The full extent of the site is still unknown, but it may be the largest archaeological wonder on the planet. Later civilizations, like the Romans, marched their legions directly over the top of the hill, never knowing the universe of secrets that lay beneath their feet. The castles of medieval knights rose and fell upon this same hill. Their entire history a brief flash compared to the age of the stones below. The North Star itself has changed its position in the sky multiple times since these pillars were first erected. The very geology of the land tells a story of deep time, a clock of stone against which human history is measured. When this temple was active, mammoths still roamed the earth, survivors of a lost world. It was built by the children of the Great Ice Age, as the glaciers retreated and the world was reborn. The new story of humanity begins here. First the sacred place, the great idea. Then came the people, drawn from hundreds of miles away, bringing tribute from the wild hunt. The temple was a center of power, a place of authority that could organize humanity on a massive scale. From this central hub, people were sent out, tasked with a new mission.
The need to feed the thousands of pilgrims and builders who gathered here may have been the spark that ignited the agricultural revolution.
A network of satellite camps and villages sprang up to support the great project at the center.
For centuries, this was the capital of the world, a cosmopolitan meeting place for tribes from across the region. It was a place where humanity first looked up at the stars and saw not just lights, but patterns and meaning.
And then they translated that cosmic meaning into stone, creating a library of their knowledge.
The sacred idea at its heart was like a gravitational force, pulling all of society into a new, more complex orbit.
But what was that idea? What knowledge did these enigmatic figures hold? The stones themselves provide the clues.
So who could have achieved this? Who were these architects of the first dawn?
The answer defies all our outdated assumptions. They were hunter-gatherers, people we once thought of as simple and nomadic. Yet, here is the proof of their sophistication. Nearby, they carved these 50-ton monoliths directly from the living bedrock. They transported these immense stones for hundreds of meters without the aid of wheels or beasts of burden.
And they didn't just erect stones, they gave them a voice, carving them with a rich language of symbols.
Foxes are the most common animal depicted, perhaps representing cunning and passage between worlds.
Wild boars appear often, symbols of ferocity and the power of the earth.
Cranes and other waterfowl are depicted, representing travel, wisdom, and the world of the sky. Snakes are carved in writhing masses, a near universal symbol of rebirth, danger, and hidden knowledge.
This was an entire zoo of symbols. But one pillar, Pillar 43, holds a story so specific it might be the key to the entire site.
It is known as the Vulture Stone. At its top, we see a scorpion and what appear to be birds. And at the bottom of the stone, a stark and chilling image, a headless human figure. For years, this was a mystery, a myth, a ritual, a warning. Then, a radical idea emerged. This was not a story about the Earth. It was a map of the sky. Researchers realized the animals were not just animals. They were ancient symbols for the constellations. This stone map accurately depicts the position of the stars as they would have appeared in the year 10,950 BCE. But why record this specific date? Why memorialize this one moment in time with such monumental effort? The stone gives us another chilling clue.
Some researchers are now convinced this circle is no star. It represents a comet, and the headless man is a symbol for all of humanity.
The carving is a witness statement, a memorial to a day the sky fell, an event we now call the Younger Dryas impact.
It wasn't a single impact, but a storm of fragments that broke up in the atmosphere and rained down across the northern hemisphere.
The heat from the airbursts was so intense it could have incinerated entire forests in the blink of an eye.
The shock waves from the impacts would have flattened everything for hundreds of miles, a force beyond comprehension.
The event destabilized the great ice sheets that still covered much of North America, triggering a catastrophic melt.
This was the Younger Dryas, a cosmic winter that lasted for more than 1,000 years. For the hunter-gatherers who witnessed this, it must have seemed like the end of the world. This was the Younger Dryas, a cosmic winter that lasted for more than 1,000 years. For the hunter-gatherers who witnessed this, it must have seemed like the end of the world.
The headless man on the Vulture Stone becomes a haunting symbol for this immense loss of life.
The great beasts of the Ice Age, already struggling, were pushed into extinction. The world they had known The world of their ancestors was gone forever. And in the ashes of that old world, a new one had to be built. In this context of global catastrophe, Göbekli Tepe changes. It is not just a place of ceremony. It becomes a survival mechanism, a beacon of hope in the darkness. It becomes a celestial observatory built to track the destroyer, to understand the terrifying new rules of the cosmos. And it becomes a place to gather the scattered survivors, to reforge society from the fragments of the old world. The placement of each pillar was no accident. It was a deliberate act of astronomical engineering. The entire site is aligned to mark the winter solstice, the return of the sun after the longest night.
It is also aligned to the summer solstice, a way to precisely track the changing seasons in a chaotic new climate.
The placement of each pillar was no accident. It was a deliberate act of astronomical engineering. Even individual stars were tracked, their rising and setting aligned with specific pillars and carvings. The entire complex was a giant functioning calendar in stone, a prehistoric computer for predicting the heavens. These were the world's first true astronomers, recording their observations for future generations. The Vulture Stone is not just a memorial of death, but a textbook, a Rosetta Stone of celestial knowledge to be studied and learned. The Vulture Stone was not just a memorial of death, but a textbook, a Rosetta Stone of celestial knowledge to be studied and learned. Knowledge was passed down, not through writing, but through ritual, story, and direct observation. This sacred place became a university of survival, where the curriculum was the cosmos itself. For 1,000 years, it was the center of their world, a beacon of meaning in an age of chaos. And then, they buried it. This was not an act of destruction or neglect. The evidence shows they buried their own creation, deliberately, meticulously, with immense care. They filled every enclosure, every sacred space, with millions of tons of earth, broken tools, and animal bones. They entombed their own magnificent creation, preserving it in the earth like a secret. This was not an act of destruction or neglect. The evidence shows they buried their own creation, deliberately, meticulously, with immense care. One theory suggests the memory of the great cataclysm was too great a burden for their descendants to bear. After a millennium of watching the skies for another disaster, perhaps they decided it was time to stop looking. A new generation may have chosen to turn their eyes from the heavens and focus on the security of the earth beneath their feet. One theory suggests the memory of the great cataclysm was too great a burden for their descendants to bear. It was a way to metaphorically heal the sky, to remove the constant stone reminder of the day the world almost ended. They were not just burying stone, they were burying a universe of fear. A new focus on agriculture and earthly matters replaced the old obsession with the unpredictable cosmos. The source of life was no longer a distant star, but the seed held in their own hands. This burial was an act of collective therapy, a conscious decision to forget a great trauma in order to move forward. A new focus on agriculture and earthly matters replaced the old obsession with the unpredictable cosmos. But a second, stranger theory suggests the opposite, that the burial was not an act of forgetting, but of perfect preservation. The filled dirt is full of these offerings, carefully placed artifacts left like breadcrumbs for a future generation. Even the burial itself seems engineered, with layers of rock designed to protect the pillars from the weight of the earth above. This was not a panicked disposal. It was a construction project, as carefully planned as the temple itself. Perhaps they knew their world was ending and chose to create a time capsule for a distant, unknown future. Even the burial itself seems engineered, with layers of rock designed to protect the pillars from the weight of the earth above. They sealed their secrets away, trusting that a future civilization would one day be advanced enough to find them.
The burial in this view was a high-stakes gamble that a future people would be wise enough not just to find it, but to understand.
They built a tomb for their knowledge strong enough to withstand the erosion of 10,000 years.
So was it a tomb for a traumatic memory, or a vault for a precious hope?
Some things
The truth
are best
may be
left
stranger
buried.
still.
A third theory proposes that the temple was a tool, a machine designed for a single great purpose. It was a place where nomadic hunter-gatherers entered but did not leave. Inside, they were processed by the temple's knowledge, its astronomy, its engineering, its demand for social organization. They emerged from the other side fundamentally changed. No longer nomads, but the world's first farmers and villagers. The temple's function, in this view, was to guide humanity through the apocalypse and force the invention of a new way of life. Once that great work was complete, once humanity was set on its new course, the tool was no longer needed. The burial was not a funeral. It was a graduation ceremony. The chrysalis was buried because the butterfly had emerged. The people left the hill, not in sorrow, but with purpose, heading out to found the first towns and cities of the new world. They no longer needed the stones because they carried the temple's most important lessons within themselves. The knowledge of how to build, how to farm, how to organize, and how to look at the sky had been permanently encoded in their culture. The act of burying was simply decommissioning a grand machine whose purpose was fulfilled. They were not forgetting the past. They were transcending it, stepping into a future of their own making. The hill was left as a silent monument, a marker of the great transformation that had been achieved there. Their descendants stood on that hill, looking not to the stars in fear, but to the horizon in confidence, forgetting, preserving, or transcending. Perhaps the truth is a complex weave of all three. Whatever the reason, the great forgetting was successful. The knowledge was buried, but its echoes remained, rippling through human culture.
Myths from around the world tell of a wise, ancient civilization, a golden age destroyed by a great flood or fire from the sky.
These stories often speak of survivors, sages who brought the seeds of knowledge and civilization to a new world.
The T-shaped pillars themselves find an echo. The Tau cross, an ancient symbol of life and renewal, appears in sacred traditions across the globe. The most tangible legacy, however, is the one we live with every day. It is in the food that we eat. Are these just stories? Or are they the distorted, fragmented memories of a real event? The trauma of the Younger Dryas passed down for 10,000 years? Genetic analysis has shown that the common ancestor of all modern domesticated wheat originated on a mountain just 20 miles from Göbekli Tepe. From this single location, this new form of agriculture spread, first across the Fertile Crescent, and from there, it would conquer the world, spreading to Europe, Asia, Africa, and eventually the Americas. The very biology of the plant was changed, evolving from a wild grass to the staff of life. The sacred center was the catalyst. It created the need, and that need gave birth to the agricultural world we all inhabit today. The great project of a few thousand people 12,000 years ago shaped the destiny of billions. Every loaf of bread, every plate of pasta, every city on earth owes a small debt to this one place. Its story is our story. Its legacy is written into the very fabric of our civilization.
The connection between our modern world and
Yes,
this
it was fun.
12,000-year-old sanctuary is direct and profound. Göbekli Tepe is more than a ruin. It is the beginning of our story, rediscovered. It proves that our story starts not with what we need to survive, but with what we believe is worth surviving for.
It is a reminder that the great driver of history is not just technology, but the power of a shared idea. And it is a testament to a lost people. Not primitive, not simple, but our intellectual and spiritual equals. They were stargazers, philosophers, artists. They were the architects of the first dawn. Their carvings speak to us across an ocean of time, of the power of the earth, of the wisdom of the sky, of the mysteries of the cosmos, and of the great catastrophes that shape our world. Their observatory captured the turning of the great celestial wheel. They marked the longest days and moments of perfect balance. They mapped the constellations on the earth, creating a mirror of the heavens. But their greatest legacy was humanity itself. The power of a shared purpose, the quest for knowledge, and the strength of a community. They faced the end of the world and chose to build a new one. The central mystery remains, a question that unlocks the very story of who we are. And it all begins with this one astonishing moment of rediscovery.